Hi everyone, it's mckenzie here again. If you don't know what I tend to do from my videos of the Care in Mind channel, I tend to raise awareness of unpaid carers, events, whether they be equality, mental health, focus on those who care for someone with mental health, ill health throughout the years. Obviously, unpaid carers, close friends, and families. And a particular focus on minority groups of carers, which is what this presentation is going to be about today, institutional distrust. And what we're going to do is explore why so many ethnic minority carers avoid formal services. This comes from my own experiences and the groups that I run. I run many carer groups. One of them is focused on minority carers who have different experiences and challenges when it comes to support or their loved one using the mental health system. So what will I be going through today on this particular talk? Well, first, we want to look at what on earth is institutional distrust. And this is obviously coming from carers. It can definitely also come from patients as well, but as you probably would have noticed, if you checked the other videos on my channel, my YouTube channel, a lot of it will be coming from the aspect of unpaid carers. So what is institutional distrust in regards to unpaid carers? Also look at why unpaid carers don't really just ask for help. Just a reminder, this video is aimed at unpaid carers. Obviously, those who work within the mental system, can view it and take what they need. But the aim of this talk today is to help educate others on the experiences they have, and to mention that they're not alone, and why are they having such a tough time with health systems. We're also looking at real stories from what I've heard from the groups that I run, and how I can connect with those stories. Why the system feels unsafe for unpaid minority carers, the pressure on carers themselves, and as a reminder, this video is aimed at unpaid carers, unpaid minority carers. Again, looking at what carers are saying as to why the first two things, not being asked for help, feeling systems unsafe, how does this become to a point where it's shown? What are carers like yourself saying in regards to experiencing forms of distrust? What should change? Obviously, I don't think talks, presentations, lectures should always be on the negative, but also looking to work together, embracing change and ideas. And a reminder to unpaid carers that their role matters, because what I'm mostly hearing is that when carers try to engage with health professionals, they sort of get the feeling that their role, their caring role, doesn't matter, and because of this, it leads to institutional distrust. It leads to more pressure on the carer. So it's just a chance to sort of, I would say, encourage and give positive value to say your role as a carer does matter. It does make a difference, and it is valuable. And as a reminder, we're building trust together. We're all in the system together. We want to work together. Sometimes there will be situations where there'll be disagreements, and I think that's part of life. But what would provide a better outcome is rebuilding trust together. And there will be situations that carers don't want to engage. They don't want to update about their situation or their loved one's situation. They don't want to look at co-producing systems, policies, procedures. So what happens if you're in that situation where you experience so many difficult experiences, you're just not ready to trust? And the last thing, the final words, coming from myself to sum up everything up and what I've explained throughout this presentation. So first, we'll look at what on earth is institutional distrust. Well, basically, it means having little faith, really, in health and government systems, which are institutions. It's not about being paranoid, as it's often based on what I've mentioned previously. Past bad experiences, they don't just go away. Depending on how bad they are, they can be very traumatic. And it's human nature, most of the time, to avoid traumatic, bad experiences. If something, there's a saying, once bitten, twice shy. Obviously, taken to another level, but the result is the same. If we're stung, then we're obviously not going to go back and experience that. And this is the case for those who are caring for someone and the health system gives them difficult and terrible experiences. So distrust begins to form. It's also about feeling judged or misunderstood. So, in the past, I've been judged in my unpaid caring role and certainly have been misunderstood. This actually links to cultural or religious differences being dismissed. There are situations that you're caring for someone in a way that relates to your culture or your religion. Not anything extreme. Specific dates and times might be special, might be holy, but the mental system won't accommodate that. It won't adapt. Use of language may also be put aside and misunderstood. We also got the fear of being blamed or losing control over our family situation. Obviously, I'm focusing on those who are caring for someone in the family. There is an element that the family is to blame, not just from the health system. It can actually come up from the community who might have a lack of understanding of mental health, but because you're coming from a cultural, religious community, and not all of them are like this, that would be unfair, but there is some perception that if you have mental health in the family, then perhaps you are to blame for not raising the family properly, or not controlling the family, or things like that. I'm just giving examples. But a fair bit of it is actually institutional distrust, and it usually may come from the carer, unless we reverse those things and say those experiences were good, then the distrust wouldn't really be there. So we're looking at, why don't carers actually just ask for help? Because at the end of the day, when you look at it, these systems, mental health systems, are actually meant to help us. When a loved one is really unwell, mental ill health, you expect those systems to step in and do what's needed. And yeah, you probably heard it. Obviously, there are situations asking for help isn't always easy. And I've mentioned this before, that there are situations where language is a barrier. Not everyone can speak the main language, so just English, 100% perfect. There will be situations they just can't. And because of that, professionals start making guesswork and assumptions and biases. And the result is that as a carer, you begin to feel treated unfairly. Maybe because you feel like your culture isn't respected, they just don't have the time, they can't adapt, no translator. They assume things within your culture, or they view their own culture as more dominant. Because of not asking for help, you worry that they'll actually take your loved one away, and your loved one will be incarcerated into the mental system for a long period of time. There is data showing minority, Black, ethnic patients being in the system way far too long, and you're worried for them. Yes, you want them to get support, but you don't want to be cut off from them for long periods of time. You're also afraid of being seen as a bad carer, or a bad parent if you're a carer, a young service user, a young patient. You don't want that label, you don't want that stain on your role, and it's stigma-inducing. And this isn't about not wanting help. It's about not feeling safe asking for it, because the keyword here is bad experiences and being put off. You failed at being let down. So coming from the care groups that I run, I often hear the following sayings, like, they said I wasn't doing enough, but they didn't really understand my culture. Another carer, who also said this at one of our groups, felt that they were scared they called social services if I told them the truth. There are situations where carers would mention that every time they tried, they just felt ignored. They felt invisible and not taken seriously. And the thing to mention is these are not actually rare stories. They're actually quite common. And it just goes to show, as I said, this talk is aimed at carers to say, you're not alone if you experience these things. It's unfortunate to say it, but they actually are quite common. So why does this system, the mental health system, actually feel unsafe? Not just for the carer, also for the patient, which is coming from an unpaid ethnic carer's perspective. Well, they exist, as data shows, racism and discrimination, both past and present. Another presentation for another day. We'll just keep it at that. But it is present. The data does show it. Use of restraint and deaths from loved ones from minority groups in those mental health systems. It would be by the professionals, the police. You're not looking at violent death as well. You're looking at the use of medication, perhaps poor value medication that has a high level of side effects. And you get the feeling that minority groups are not getting a fair deal. They're not getting access to psychotherapy. And when they ask for it, they're sort of dismissed. You also get health services providing, one size fits all, cultural assumptions, cultural biases, unconscious biases. And from there, if you're looking at minority carers as a whole, a good example is seeing carers as BAME, like Black, Asian, minority ethnic. You really can't lump all that together. Cultures have their own value differences, experiences, ideals. And the sad thing, I suppose, is, yes, there will be complexity in those cultures and religious backgrounds. We can't really make assumptions. It's dangerous. And carers get hit by a double blow. If it was cultural assumptions, then as a carer, you feel you might not be believed, your concerns are dismissed or minimized, especially if you're aware that your loved one's about to relapse and the system won't accommodate your concerns. All this will lead up to a lack of trust, really, especially in confidentiality. There's two types, obviously patient confidentiality and care confidentiality. And if you feel to distrust the system, institutional distrust, you're less likely to be involved, or want to be involved. And again, I did mention fear of shaming the community. Again, another unfortunate fact, when mental health is there, to some people that just won't understand, feel threatened, might even think it's funny, but this presents stigma for the unpaid carer and their loved one. So trying to do this picture fairly well. Basically, the guy's carrying a massive backpack with the words on it. Obviously, care and responsibilities, medication schedules, hospital visits, and kind of been mentioned a few times, fear of relapse. I don't know if I draw it the best way I could. Obviously, when you avoid services, there's a double, I'd say a two-edged sword, basically. The pressure actually falls entirely on the carer. There is a risk if you avoid services for too long or avoid them at all, then there are consequences to pay for that as well. And I don't advocate for those who miss services or don't trust them completely. As I said, we all want to work together. And if you don't get support for your loved one, this is what you risk. Emotional and physical exhaustion, no time for yourself, guilt when feeling overwhelmed, and there is no guidance or breaks, hence no respite. And that's the risk unpaid minority carers will take, which is not a good thing. So what are carers like yourselves who are watching this video, what are they saying in regards to why all this is happening? Well, they feel that the cultural sense of support is just not really there. They need to have a focus that staff will understand or come from similar backgrounds. So what I'm saying is these things here will help to make a difference, not completely. I don't think they're 100%, but they will make some differences. Basically, if you have a mental health service in an area that is a high diverse area and community, it makes sense having a system or staff that come from that community and understand that community and have similar backgrounds. This could be multiple. Like a good example is a care of lived experience, a lived community, cultural experience as well. So therefore, when fountain carers not only see them, but get a high chance of being understood. I'm not saying this is 100% will work brilliantly, but it is a step in a good direction. Also, in order to avoid being dismissed, unheard, and being invisible, carers want to be heard. They want to, not judged. They want options on whether who to talk to, when and where, and also having that confidentiality regarding what they're going to say. This one's more tricky because who has time for peer support? It's really difficult. But there are some services, mental health services, that do invest in peer support for patients and carers. And what carers are saying is they wouldn't mind peer support with other carers who understand. And this could be looking towards ethnic carer groups, minority carer groups, groups where they sympathize and value the carer's voice and experience. This is again a bit difficult because you can't accommodate every language under the sun, but ways around it is looking at your local community, what's the highest use of language, apart from English, regarding from that community. You could bring in translation for Chinese, but then if your community is South Asian, Indian community, that doesn't really make sense. So it's just trying to understand in information in clear language for that type of community, and also challenging jargon and being aware of it. The NHS health service, mental health service is littered with technical jargon. One thing to mention is what I've mentioned here, obviously not all of them, but because there's a lot more that can be added here. These are actually just basic rights. They're not really special requests. You're not asking for much if you're asking for these things, to be heard and not be judged. Sometimes it's care awareness training. Sometimes it's equality awareness training. But they do make a difference. Those that receive that type of training will make a difference compared to those that don't value that type of training. So adding an extra, I suppose, emphasis on this, adding more to what should change, mental health services must respect diverse cultures and beliefs. I'm not saying this is easy. This requires a lot of engagement and continued work and shared understanding. But as I said, with other things, it's a step in the right direction. There should be some thought about interpreters, not having to make the carer beg for one. I'm not saying there should be one on hand in every language. That's not possible. And I work in the information technology field. If there's something that's placed online, then technology can be used to translate things. But if it's held on site, if anything like a meeting is held on site, it doesn't hurt to provide an advocate that may speak the family's language. As a carer, it's about being, honest about what will and won't happen when you actually ask for help. this is basically looking at what's available in that service, an introduction to that service, and also seeking help from advocates. They may be based at your care centre. But offering forms of flexible support for the whole family, not just for the person diagnosed. This is just trying to be holistic. Obviously, I can understand due to the culture of the mental health system that the focus is on the patient. But if all supports and services is on the patient, then it's not holistic to what will happen when the patient's discharged and the carer doesn't feel involved and therefore may refuse to provide care and support because they don't feel valued to do so. And the idea really in all of this is to involve parents and carers in decisions, not ignore them. Even if it might seem unreasonable, then it doesn't hurt to take note, write them down, and discuss those options with families and carers. So going back to carers watching this video, you're not actually just a carer. If you're looking at this in the cultural, spiritual context, you actually are a protector, an advocate, where you're supporting your loved one with advice and information and decision making. You might also be a translator, where if you come from a minority background and your loved one's trying to understand services, you may wish to translate things for them. It's also important that unpaid carers have the ability to be in a constant presence. So therefore, if the loved one's discharged, you're there. You're doing the best you can for them, and you're doing it in a way that makes you seem as a source of strength. So with all of these things that you're providing as an unpaid minority carer, it's only fair that you deserve respect, support, and rest, not judgment or silence. So looking at this one, how can we rebuild trust in NHS trust? And it doesn't really come from policies, it actually comes from people. And I would take this further, people who understand. So there's a lot of training, care awareness training, ethnic equality training. It usually starts from there. And it starts when services apologize when they get things wrong. It often starts when services make space for your carer voice. Rebuilding trust also starts when services actually show up in your communities and not just in the clinics or inpatient wards or in buildings and kept at a distance. And when carers feel that the professional not just talking at them, but they're professionals, health professionals, actually listening to the carer. I'm not saying again these things are easy to do, it will take time, but there's added value when services behave this way compared to the ones that don't. So as a reminder, if as a carer you've been through a lot of trauma, a lot of bad experiences, then it's okay if you're still not ready to trust. Obviously, you're doing the best with the resources you have. However, it's only fair that you deserve safe support. You also deserve that you're not being told that you're failing or being cautious. It also helps that in regards to building trust, that you have the right to ask for services that respect you and not being told what's available or what's only available for yourself. Change is possible, but it starts with being heard and being acknowledged. So the final words on this presentation regarding ethnic minority carers is you are actually doing something remarkable. Caring for someone going through mental health can be challenging. You have to learn very quickly and fast. Missed sort of opportunities can present in situations where carers are doing far more than they should. And even when you feel invisible to the system, you matter, because even when no one checks on you, your love and labour actually hold everything together, even if the professionals don't acknowledge your presence or don't identify you as the carer. Remember, you don't have to do this alone. There are groups out there. There are care leads, care support officers. You have to seek them out. There are social prescribers. You shouldn't have to fight to be seen. Unfortunately, there's millions of carers having to do this each day, and you do deserve better, and we all must work to make such things happen. Well, the last final words on this is, if you do like this video, please give it a like, subscribe to my YouTube channel for more care awareness, minority awareness, equality awareness videos to come. And if you're caring, take care of yourself. Thank you for watching.